evening and welcome to the Pendrick-Hudson Board of Education meeting. Today is April 11th, 2018. May we please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business is to put our agenda in order, and for tonight I'm going to pull the first audience comment section only because we missed one board meeting due to snow, and we have a really packed agenda. So, knowing that information, can I please have a motion to accept the agenda? All in favor? Aye. Does anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda? Then can I please have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Second? All in favor?
Excuse me. Could the audience object to that? Because we do publish your agenda online and
Yes,
you're
but,
breaking that now.
yes, I'm sorry.
You can just,
I'm sorry, I really am sorry, but we've got a packed agenda and we have teachers here that have to do a presentation, so that's why we decided just to do that.
okay, you should really do that ahead of time. so
I
people
know,
can
and
plan
I
that.
am so sorry that we didn't.
That's why
you
you
know-
publish the agenda for the public.
No, I
online.
understand that,
So
and I'm
it should have been put
sorry.
on the end because then people can go do things and come here
Right.
for the end instead of making us come sit here for
Right,
hours.
and I apologize for that. It's just, we've got so much to cover, and we can't be here till 11:30, 12 o'clock. That's happened in the past. So I am so sorry to everybody who came out for tonight.
Can you please make a note that if you plan on doing that in the future to change your agenda, the published agenda?
I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah.
we will. Okay. So that brings us to our donation items. Acceptance of donations, and we have two donations. One is the Henhood Sailor Baseball Parents Club is donating 25 sets of uniforms to the varsity baseball team, and we thank them very much for their very generous donation. It's wonderful to have full pants, jerseys, and hats for our team. And our second donation is very, very, very generous family, Barbara Katzenstein's family, who set up a scholarship fund every year to pay for summer camp for students with significant handicap conditions. So we thank them profusely for doing this every year for our students. So with that in mind, can I please have a motion to approve the donations? Second? All in favor? And that brings us then to our superintendent's report.
Yeah, I'll give a couple brief updates because we do have a number of presentations. The first one is with regards to Indian Point and the state budget. The state budget includes a $24 million allocation for affected communities with regards to Indian Point. So that includes our school district, includes the county of Westchester, the town of Cortland, village of Buchanan, as well as the the local fire district that supports Indian Point. What that $24 million is for is it's to be used for tax stabilization. Once the plant closes and completely ceases operation in the year 2021, those dollars will be available to us in those other communities that I mentioned to bring in as revenue as the revenue from the Indian Point pilot goes away. So currently in the New York State Electric Power Plant Cessation Fund is just shy of $70 million, of which 24, minimally 24, will be allocated expressly for our community. It sounds like a lot of money, and we're very, very thankful to all of our elected officials who did the right thing and got this done. But it's not enough, and we briefly celebrated today with a press conference, and tomorrow we have a task force meeting to determine our next steps in advocacy. But it's very, very good news, because in an environment where maybe things don't appear to be getting done politically, Democrats and Republicans and others in New York State fought for our interests, fought for the interests of our kids and our community, and all of those that are impacted by Indian Point, and they did the right thing. They put politics aside and they did the right thing. So I'm very, very thankful to Senator Murphy, Assemblywoman Galef, because they had the task of educating their colleagues and the governor and his team to make this a priority in the budget. They're not sure that any allocation to a community of this magnitude has ever been part of the state budget, and that's a really good thing for our community, and a sign that sometimes politics works, and that they can get together and fight for the same cause regardless of their political affiliation. So we're very thankful and supportive of their efforts, but we know we have more work to do, but that's very, very good news for our school district and our community. Tonight, as you walked in, you perhaps saw some activity in the auditorium. The High School Musical kicks off Friday night. They have a show Friday night, Saturday matinee, Saturday night, and Sunday. Get your tickets, because these shows do sell out, and they're a lot of fun to see the kids and some staff participate in these events. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, Mary Poppins. Sorry.
And I just want to interject that tomorrow night, they're having a sensory sensitive performance. So for children that are autistic or maybe a little bit more sensory sensitive, and that performance will be for free tomorrow evening. So anybody in the audience who has children who may benefit from that program, thank goodness to Claire Carey, because that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do for the kids in the district.
This also is the time, as we hopefully during the spring, I guess on Friday we'll have some spring weather, that our seniors, around 200 kids graduating from the high school this June, are still determining which colleges and universities they'll go to, and in very short order they'll send a big fat check that oftentimes is their parents will send a big fat check that is a commitment to where they'll go to school next year. So throughout the spring, the high school has different events for kids to wear their sweatshirts or t-shirts, or they put their names on the board. But again, our community should be very, very proud of the outcomes that the tax dollars pay for. We have students who are going to Ivy League schools, the Ivy League schools of the West Coast. We've had kids accepted everywhere. It's really an exciting time. And that's usually when senioritis sets in, so we have to make sure that even though they know where they're going to college, they finish out their requirements here. Yesterday, we opened up our home field for lacrosse, and we had contests on it today as well. So with our winter issues, we only had a few games that we had to move to other facilities, but our boys and girls lacrosse teams are going to finish their season playing their home games with us, so long as the field holds up. But I don't have to educate too many people around here that we've had a really wild winter, and that has certainly taken its toll on some of our facilities. Also, it's concert season, so throughout May and early June, all 5 schools will have all of their music groups performing, orchestra, chorus, and band. So those concerts are identified and up on our calendar. Be sure you catch those, because that's always a great way for kids who participate in our music programs. That's their big event. That's their big contest and their big game to be able to perform. Yeah, all of the honor societies, National Honor Society, the Music Honor Society. We've got honor societies for a whole lot of people. The art show during the month of April, it opens up on opened on March 30th. So if your calendars aren't full, they certainly will be soon if you want to be involved and see some of the outcomes of what the kids are doing. And lastly, a theme that we've been talking about here for the last little while around safety and security. We're continuing to evaluate increasing our security detail. We've had conversations with a number of other school districts and agencies about what path to take. This school and this district in the past has had different models of implementing security detail through different personnel, and you'll hear a little bit later tonight in our capital project proposal significant proposed increases to safety and security across all 5 schools. So that continues to be an ongoing priority for us. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. In the interest, again, of time, and I hope nobody is upset by this, I'm going to postpone committee reports. So we have teachers here that are presenting mentor program.
So I'll turn it over to Margaret.
Would you like me to introduce it?
So it's my great pleasure this evening. I feel as though it was about 5 years ago when we presented the curriculum piece and I talked about the mentoring and the new teacher induction program. So this evening we have some familiar faces joining us. So it's my pleasure to introduce you first to Jen Tate. Jen is the mentor program coordinator this year. And we've done some exciting things together, and I asked her if she could speak for a few minutes about the program in the 17-18 school year.
And she has the rope out, if they go too long. Just for a little background information, I'm a speech therapist in the district for over 30 years, even though I'm 29. So I just wanted to make it that. Yes, and I have been a mentor, and so this is my first year as a mentor coordinator. And the mentor program was set up so that brand new teachers can come into the district and work with experienced teachers in their same field or field of interest. We had 18 new mentees this year, so new staff members. And as the reports go on, we meet every month, and the mentors say that they learn as much from the mentees as the mentees learn from the mentors. These are people fresh out of school, they have new ideas, new training, so it's a great experience for everybody involved. The mentors are there to provide resources for success. We're going to go move this on. They share strategies, promote instructional competence, help to set up and achieve goals. And they, of course, need to lead by example. So you want people coming to work on time, volunteering, doing extra, being on committees, being involved with children, going just above and beyond in all areas in the community. So the training for the mentors, they're involved in at least a half-day training. And in the training, we talk about who was your mentor or who is your mentor. Why were they your mentor? So things to think about. And we talk about being the mentor that you wish you had if you didn't have one. We talk about confidentiality, and we talk about the process that new teachers go through. They have different highs and lows throughout their first year. They're super excited and nervous, and then they come to a slump and they're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this, and all the panic that sets in and setting up their classrooms and meeting people. The requirements for all the mentors and mentees are to attend monthly meetings. They have to turn in a journal every month to reflect on something they've learned, something they want to learn more about. They have to meet with each other for 35 hours outside of the school day. So beyond the school day, they have to meet for 35 hours with their mentors and mentees. And they're also required to observe each other or observe someone that would be relevant. So if somebody was having difficulty with a reading lesson, they may actually go in and observe a reading specialist. If they're having difficulty with behaviors, they may go in and observe a teacher that has like a great classroom management routine in their classroom. And we encourage them to seek out whatever kind of help they need or whatever information they want to know more about, to seek out the teachers, not just their mentors, to help them grow in every area, not just in their academic area. Some of the topics that we talked about this year were great. Last year was more just kind of general meetings. This year we kind of really focused on trainings and development of the staff. So I'm just going to look at them because I don't want to cheat. I don't want to forget. But we talked the first time about the importance of relationships. So that includes everyone on the staff. We're talking about the secretaries, the custodians, the TAMA members, the cafeteria ladies, the principals, the administration, because without one of those people, our job is impossible. we need to be part of that staff, and we need to negotiate all of the different members of our staff, and we need to have good relationships with them, because if you need something done, sorry, but, the principal's not gonna come and change your light bulb, and if your bulb's out and you need to do a presentation, Margaret's not gonna run over and help us do that. We need to be networking with all staff members. So that's a really important piece. And to go out and socialize with your staff members after school, because you need to build, we spend more hours here than we do at home, so this is a place to build your second family and build those relationships. Then we also talked about volunteering. So going above and beyond, showing up for parades, participating in the events in the district where we're raising money for either in the district or families in need. We had one teacher this year who went above and beyond and went to the bus stop several times to make sure that their student got on, because the student was having anxiety about coming to school. And that teacher from the high school drove to that bus stop and met that child and said, "I'm here for you," and then met him when he got here off the bus. So we have some outstanding teachers that we're really proud of this year. We talked about the APPR, so that's how they're being evaluated, what's expected, what it looks like. We've talked about their portfolio websites. So I'm sure you've seen some of the teachers' websites now that you've looked at first-year teachers, and they're really excited and very impressive, unlike my PowerPoint, my first one. And I saw these ladies' PowerPoint, I was like, oh God, I'm old and I don't know how to do this very well. We talk about parent contact and relationships and how important that is in maintaining and helping a student, because if the student knows that you're all working as a network with the parents and everybody's on the same page, they're less likely to try and wiggle their way out of doing an assignment, or knowing that when they get home if there's going to be a communication, and to reach out to parents for good things, not to wait until something's falling apart. Just reach out and say, hey, your child raised their hand today and they had a great answer on something, or I love the report they did, or I'm so happy they come to school every day. Something little to help build that relationship. In case something doesn't go great and you have to call them, at least they've already developed a relationship with those teachers. We talk about behavior management, IEP goals and responsibilities, the growth mindset, which you're going to hear more about from these lovely ladies. And we also talk about expectations for years 2, 3, and 4 going forward. The program evaluation is done with a survey. So we asked the mentors, was it helpful? Was your mentor helpful to you? Did you feel that there was confidentiality? Did you feel comfortable seeking out advice from your mentor? Some people, do, and some people, it's about building relationships. And if you don't find comfort there, they could come to me, or they could go to somebody else on the staff. What did they find helpful, and what topics do they want to know more about? So they'll be filling out this survey next month, in May. Mentoring on, so we're going to talk about years 2, 3, and 4. They're going to continue to have guidance with staff and Margaret and Matthew for as long as he's here. And I always tell them that I could be a continued support, and if I don't know something, I will absolutely find out for them to the best of my ability. Sorry for saying. And the trainings that they've been going through is Google Classroom and Google Level 1, 2, and 3, I think is a new requirement. Skillful Teacher, with these lovely ladies are going to talk to you about. And additional course offerings that they just find interesting. There's always course offerings within the district, outside of the district that they can get approval for, and teachers are seeking out additional knowledge in areas that either are directly related to their field or outside of their field that they're just interested in learning. We talked about peer coaching and collaboration. So how do we help each other? How do you look at yourself, and how do you help them look at themselves and see what could be tweaked in a lesson? Sometimes I was telling Margaret that I was listening to myself because I record my students a lot of times, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't very encouraging. I sounded terrible, and then I'll tweak it, and it makes you much more aware when you're recording yourself, or if you videotape yourself and watch yourself. So I recommended to some of the staff to do that. They don't have to share it with anyone, but just looking at yourself is very helpful sometimes. You might not like it. Like I asked him to make the camera 10 pounds lighter. He said he'll do his best. They talked about self-reflection, and that is, how did my lesson go? How can I make it better? Did the students learn what I wanted them to learn? Am I engaging the students in a higher level thinking? Am I adjusting and modifying lessons to meet all of my students' needs? So if there's students with IEPs or 504s, or who don't have IEPs and 504s but have special needs that haven't been addressed through special education, what am I doing to make sure that they are understanding? Are they answering the questions that I want them to learn in this lesson? And we just talked about what an excellent teacher is, and that's a person who creates instructionally secure environment, considers student ability and adjustments, makes adjustments, uses appropriate instructional feedback and assessments, reflects on their practice, focuses on student learning, and of course respects and loves the children. And that's my presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Questions, anyone?
We definitely appreciate.
Okay, so before this school year, that was the extent of the new teachers' experience in the district. Year one, they had a mentor, and before Jen, the program was run by Sean over at the middle school, and he did an equally fabulous job. But we talked a lot, and I know I've spoken to the board about the administrators talking that we really want to support people all the way to tenure, because it sometimes is a rocky road for any number of reasons, and just feel that people are through building relationships and getting their feet under them in their first year is sometimes a mistake. So this year, we asked our folks going into year two, who now have moved past the mentor experience, to do a number of things, and one thing that they are going to speak to you about tonight is a course called Studying Skillful Teaching. This is run out of a group called Research for Better Teaching in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's been around for a long time and has a very good reputation, and in my work with my peers at BOCES, I actually brought it back to Joe and said, you know, a few districts are using this as part of their mentor program, and I think it's very interesting. Laura Eade, who isn't with us tonight, was with me for a presentation that was done for the Hudson River Teacher Association. We both looked at each other and said, it would be great to have a common language with one another. And so we decided to give this a shot. So as I said, again, teachers in year two, some in year three are taking this course this year. We have a pretty large cohort. About how many people? About 18, I think, right? So a few weeks ago before the break, I put out an email and said, would anybody be willing to come and speak to the board for a few minutes about what this course has done for you? And I was flooded with emails as a response, which was really lovely. So these four victims are here tonight to speak with you. Please let me introduce them. Katrina Rocco is a reading teacher at Frank G. Lindsay. Come on up. I don't know the order that they're speaking, so. Mary Landry, music teacher at the elementary level, I think works in both Furnace Woods and Frank G. Paula Sarles is science in the academy program, and Christina Zula is social studies in the academy program. And again, I don't know the order, so please welcome them, and they'll spend a few minutes walking you through their Studying Skillful Teaching course.
So I'm just going to introduce to you the basis of the course that we took. This is very brief. You're not going to get the full understanding, but it'll give you a general idea. So this is the main pyramid we use throughout this course. Almost every course we started by looking at this pyramid. The main objective was to improve our practices and improve the achievement of our students. In order to do that, we need to develop a common language. We also need to develop a conceptual framework that fit our students and fit our beliefs. So the first thing we did was we looked at our beliefs. Do we have the same beliefs? Do we have different beliefs? Why do you have those beliefs? Once you were able to understand your beliefs of teaching, why you were teaching, why you were here, what you wanted your students to learn, you will be able to develop all these other categories: management, motivation, curriculum planning, instructional strategies. One of the most profound things I got out of this class was this teacher told us to look at each box in this pyramid as a drawer. You can open any drawer, pull out any strategy for that topic that matches your students' needs. So the outcome, when we went to go through this course, these were the main outcomes we were looking to achieve. The best way we did that, which we're each going to talk about a little, is we experimented with one of the strategies we learned. We then were able to reflect on that strategy. How did it go in your class? Did somebody else have a similar or different experience? And figured out what worked, what didn't work for us. So for me, one of the most that I got out of this class was, in order to make your students successful within your class, you have to build them up first. You have to motivate them. If your students aren't motivated, they're not going to be successful. You're not going to be successful as a teacher. So, especially within the academy program, I really look to build my relationship with my student first and foremost. The material can come later. If I don't have a relationship with my student, they're not going to be successful. After I was able to build my relationship with my student, get them hooked in learning, I needed to look at how I wanted them to learn. In science, I can easily use exploration to get them interested, to explore a topic, to explore an area they wanted to research. So I use exploration and motivation in order to make my classroom successful.
Yes. So one element from the course that had a major impact on me was something called criteria analysis, and it's defined as a process that is used to analyze students' work and to determine next instructional steps. That's just a simple definition because it's actually something that's a little bit more complex. It involves creating a lesson plan with a mastery objective, which is a very specific goal, identifying criteria for success, which is what students should be able to do at the end of a lesson and at the end of an assessment, using formative assessment that gathers evidence, which is your proof as to whether or not your lesson was successful, and whether or not your assessment was successful, analyzing the assessment data, reflecting on it, and then determining where to go from there. So, criteria for success is what I was just mentioning. If the lesson is effective, students should be able to accomplish multiple tasks. So I kind of listed some criteria for success that I did use for a certain activity with my students. There's 5 separate points there that hopefully at the end of the lesson the students should be able to achieve those tasks. So the course did emphasize that the criteria for success should be clear to the students, which is why I use that quote: when there are inconsistencies between those evaluating and those being evaluated, it's often a recipe for conflict. The students need to know what you're assessing them on. It's no secret. And then it's easier for them to achieve those goals. So this was an example of one of the criteria analysis that I did with my students. Now, again, I'm a reading teacher, so I tend to either push in or pull in with small groups. This was a small group of 5 students. The plus signs basically mean that the students achieved the criteria that were on the previous slide. The minus signs and the percents at the bottom are what I really need to look at as a teacher. The minus signs mean the students didn't fully fulfill those separate criteria. So again, I look down at the bottom, and where I see 40%, that means only 40% of my students achieved and were able to meet those criteria. So when I analyze and look at what I did with the lesson, in reality, I have to start thinking, was it something I did in my lesson? But when I actually looked at my lesson, they were pretty successful, and in the end, I realized that the only problem was I didn't give them enough time to fully meet those, to fully fill what they had to do. So why use it? Why will I use it in my classroom? First of all, it helps me focus on the objective. It keeps the teacher and the students focused at what they have to get done. It's easy to go off on a tangent. It helps students create it helps me create an appropriate form of assessment. Is my assessment is it accurately measuring what I want the students to do? Thank you. It also identifies the areas of weakness and strength. My weaknesses, my strengths, what did I do well, what didn't I do so well, as well as the students, what were they able to do, and where do I need to go from there? And that brings me to step 4, which is I'll use it because it assists with plans for the next instructional steps. Where am I going from there? Do I need to redo something, or am I ready to challenge them with something else? So overall, this was a quick in a nutshell what a criteria analysis is. It can be used across all disciplines, and it's a great tool for guiding teachers with their instruction, as well as helping evaluate the effectiveness of a lesson and the assessment. Thank you.
All right, one of the areas, the aspects of the class I found most beneficial was the idea of transitioning kids from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. So we're all pretty familiar with the basic bell curve. Most of our students fall into average performers with smaller amounts than low performers and high performers. But the problem is that we learn students tend to self-sort themselves into these categories by about first grade. That's 6 years old. And they believe in their ability to move a little bit within their area, but never jump from a low to an average or an average to a high. They think it's fixed, what they're able to do for the rest of their lives, basically. So in music, this is a very common fixed mindset. She's so good and she barely has to practice, I'll never be able to play as well as she does, which leads to frustration and the inevitable, I'm just not that talented, I quit. So instead, I've been working with my students on actively teaching them a growth mindset. It's true we're all born with some kind of basic innate ability. We have a word for it in music, we call it talent, a word I dread, because talent is far less important than the effective effort that you put behind it, along with a little bit of confidence that you're able to achieve through that effective effort, which then gains you achievement, which then adds in and inspires more confidence. And this cycle continues, and really the educational journeys of each student, they should not be compared to one another, and the pace at which the students learn especially should not be compared to one another. So in the classroom, a couple of ways that I've started doing this, particularly with my third grade, using personal examples and stories to demonstrate the growth mindset mentality. So I told my kids a couple weeks ago, while I was one of those in music where music came very naturally to me and I didn't have to practice as hard as some others up to a certain point. In science, I had to work painfully hard to get that A. But it's important to teach our kids that it's acceptable to put in the extra time and put in the extra work. That doesn't mean that you're somehow lacking. Remove the fear of failure. So that includes removing restrictions on the number of times that students can take a test over or complete redo an assignment, as long as they're actively seeking out that help. So for me, that includes, we do recorder karate, that includes playing tests. And also important to teach the other kids that they should be encouraging of those who take advantage of those opportunities. Demonstrate appropriate inner dialogue and actively teach it to your students. This has been vital in my recorder unit with my kids. So not just sending them home, okay guys, your homework is to practice this, but breaking down what is that 5-step practice procedure. Teaching them which strategies would you match to which rhythmic issue or which articulation issue, so that the kids are more prepared for that at home. So if you do all of this, we will go from this to this.
So I am going to talk about creating clarity in the classroom. And clarity isn't just, am I being clear, but it's about these 5 components. It's about creating lessons that use best practices to ensure that students understand the value, objectives, and reason for every lesson, activating prior knowledge, choosing the appropriate strategy or explanatory device, monitoring for student engagement, and checking for understanding. So that's a lot. It happens every day, and it happens in every lesson for every class and every course that we teach. Studying skillful teaching has directly addressed clarity. It's one of our draws in the pyramid that Paula showed you before. Studying skillful teaching has given us different strategies and ways to create clear lessons, and we focus on presenting information. So when we choose an explanatory device or a strategy, it's really important to think about our students and what they will understand. And so on the right side is a Venn diagram, and Venn diagrams have been used in classrooms for a really long time. And Jen can tell you because she's been teaching for 29 years, right? But she's really it's all right. So a Venn diagram asks students to compare and contrast 2 different concepts or ideas. On the left side is the compare and contrast bubble map. And this came directly from the Studying Skillful Teaching binder. And so while learning about Soviet Union Russia about 2 months ago, one of my students asked me, well, how is that similar to North Korea today? And I was like, wow, that's a great question. So 2 days later, here is my bubble map. And I gave them an article that was written by a Russian expat living in Korea. I couldn't have planned it better if I tried. And I gave them the article along with their learning, and they used the compare and contrast bubble map to write down their information and use the article and their knowledge. And one of my students came up, actually a few of my students came up to me at the end and said, wow, that was so much better than the Venn diagram. And so it took some explaining to see where to put the differences and where to put the similarities and how to use it. But once they were clear on what it was meant for, it was much easier for them to see the similarities and the differences using this map rather than the Venn diagram that really doesn't allow for the comparisons to show. It really focuses more on the difference. And so it's not that I wouldn't use a Venn diagram, but maybe I would use it in a situation where the differences are what's most important. And so that's about creating. So that's one small piece of creating clarity in the classroom. And so in Teaching Academy this year, I came in with 3 years of curriculum, Global 1, Global 2, and US History, that were created for regular general education classes I had taught in the past. And so studying skillful teaching has really helped me expand my toolbox to better meet the needs of my students. One of the major themes in our course, and this is a conversation I've had with Margaret, is why am I teaching this group of students this skill or information with this strategy? And so in revamping my curriculum to meet my particular students' needs, in talking about motivation and building relationships and how we structure our lessons speaks to that all the time. Studying skillful teaching has really given us so many different strategies and so many different ways to think about our lessons and our students and our relationships and our filing cabinets to build lessons that really meet our students' needs and maintain rigor regardless of the classroom or the program. Any questions?
Now, do you discuss all of this with your mentors? Or do they discuss it with you, or is this something that you discuss with Margaret?
Well, this year we don't have mentors because we're all year 2, so we finished our mentor program.
So you're done.
We're
You
done.
only have mentors for 1 year, right?
Well, I'll be
Yeah.
honest, I've been coming back and constantly sharing with my colleagues, with Margaret, with Donna, who's my principal, about just everything that I'm getting out of it. And, you know, when I talk about it too, it helps stick in my mind. And I really, I don't know, I feel like I've gotten, these were just little tools that we took 6 or 7 days, 8 days, and squeezed
Well, we
into
attempted
10 minutes. But
Yeah.
I feel like we left there with a lot.
Margaret made me go to training too. She said that my mind was a little old and rusty. And so I did bring back skills, and we would do some little practice, like to start our mentor meetings. We would often do a little practice of one of the skills that were taught at the training.
Just nobody can hear you.
So I incorporated, as I was saying, Margaret had me go to the skillful teacher training. So at each of the lessons that we had, or the group mentor-mentee meetings, I would bring back one of the skills and have everybody practice it as students. So they were getting some of those skills to take back to their classroom. Because there were so many great things. Every time you go to the class, you come back and go, oh my God, I can't wait to use that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fabulous. So they did get hands-on, and I believe they're all going to go for the training at some point.
Who's they all?
The new people, or have the training.
Yes, so we again, this is a practice really that the Bedford schools have done for many, many, many years with their new teachers. As a matter of fact, we hired one of their teachers, and Shirley Zhao, who teaches earth science in the high school, has been through the program, so she obviously won't need to repeat it. But I must say that the feedback from this group and their colleagues has been just overwhelmingly positive about what they're learning and what they're taking away. And I think too, because I've been through cohort work, that to work as a cohort is an added value for you. Instead of just going to a one-off by yourself in a workshop, they have each other to continue to bounce ideas off of. So needless to say, we will have our year 2 people. We'll be getting ready to register the first year people for this course in the fall. And because it has had such amazing feedback, the administrative team has decided that we will open up some seats to some of our tenured staff. And if they would like to join them in the study, we will certainly make that offer possible for folks. But I thank you all for coming, and those of you watching at home, if your colleagues watch your performance, thank you for all of you for offering to do this. It means a lot to me that this was a successful experience for you, so I appreciate that, and I love being in your classrooms watching you work, so thank you.
No, and thank you also for the board. It is extremely positive to have teachers actually here presenting instead of always just having administrators, because you get to see the actual application and how much you either enjoyed it or didn't enjoy it, or, you know, what were the benefits. And we sincerely appreciate you coming out tonight and giving of your time, and know that it was very interesting to hear all of this, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, next we have a presentation on the program budget.
Okay, so we are a few weeks behind in a couple of our budget presentations because of snow and weather and all of those good things, so we're playing catch-up tonight. So tonight, I'm pinch hitting for Matthew. It's the instruction. Oh, sorry. I'm pinch hitting for Matthew, and I'll kick things off and then have Margaret join me to talk about some pieces and some data in the middle. But this is our instructional program review for next year, and we'll talk about our three main priorities as we build our instructional budget. These are no surprise to anyone who's been on the board, or for those of you at home who are here that have paid attention. So obviously our goal as a school district is to maximize student growth and to make sure that our kids have opportunities that perhaps we didn't when we were school age. So of course we want to make sure that our existing programs are preserved for our students. We have dynamic programs throughout the gamut, kindergarten through 12th grade. The opportunities we provide our kids are second to none, and in fact, if you've ever heard the high school principal Jim Mackin give his presentation, a number of presentations, he compares Hendrick Hudson High School and some of the programs and offerings there to other high-achieving Westchester high schools and some private schools, and it's amazing what we can offer our kids that others just do not. So this budget supports all of the programs, all of the staff, everything that we currently do. This budget is proposing that we continue to do all of those excellent things next year. A significant piece of what we do in terms of teaching and learning is professional learning and support. You just heard about it: teacher mentoring, staff development, training. The world is changing. The schools that we were in when we were students and the schools that we were in when we were student teaching are much different today than they were back then, and we have to make sure we model lifelong learning and that we're a step ahead or a chapter ahead in brain research and everything we know about how kids learn and what positive school cultures and environments look like. And lastly, fiscal responsibility. Since the advent of the tax cap, we've had a priority in this district to make sure that we do things within the tax cap so that we're demonstrating fiscal restraint and multi-year fiscal planning, and that we're not doing one-offs or that we're introducing new programs that take us over the tax cap or pull away from other programs we have. As in the past, and we'll get to this in a little bit, to maximize our staff through efficiencies and also through retirements. We'll talk about retirements in a little bit. But scheduling efficiencies is really a priority for us. We have a number of teachers, and Mary Landry was here, who work in multiple buildings, and that's because that's where the demand is. We have art teachers, music, phys ed, reading. We have a number of teachers that travel to go to where the student needs are. Student needs either by perhaps IEP or program demand, or needs based on class sections, band, chorus, orchestra, art, you name it. So we're continuing to try to find ways to maximize scheduling efficiencies so we get the greatest bang for our buck from the staff that we have. In addition to general fund dollars that support our budget, we also have a number of other state and federal sources, and I'll let Margaret get into those to fill everyone in on the expectation we have from the state and federal government to support our programs.
So what you see, basically what really funds curriculum and instruction and professional learning are the title grants. And the good thing about that is it's free money. The bad thing about that is that we never know exactly how much free money we're getting from year to year. So I showed you the 17-18 amounts, and you'll notice there are question marks in the 18-19 because we haven't yet seen the allocations for that. They don't usually release that until closer to the end of the school year. But this year we had that sum of money that was used, and we'll go to the next page in a minute, and you'll see what we used all of that funding for. At the bottom is district funding. So out of the district budget, we support summer curriculum and curriculum writing and in-service work all through the school year with that first line item. The mentor program, that's the monies that are put aside to pay the mentors for their work. Registrations for the mentees in any programs we place them in. The money that Jen receives for overseeing the program. The BOCES PD line item is large because we do use a lot of their services. The good thing with using BOCES is we get the COSER back. And then seminars and meetings, sending teachers outside the district to whatever seminars and professional workshops we can find that are of value to the goals that we've established in the community. So let's talk a little bit more about, that's tiny, about what gets funded. Title I is intended for students that are at risk, and Title I funds our after school, our summer AIS support. That happens at all 5 buildings in the area of reading. Summer Kinder Camp is funded through Title I. Reading Teacher Professional Development comes through that. Reading Teacher Professional Materials comes through that. And anything that we purchase for student support in terms of students at risk comes all out of that Title I funding. It's a large amount of money, and we have, I think, really in the past few years made tremendous use of that particular funding source. Title II is all about professional development for teachers, and so that bucket of money is directly related to the outside consultants that we use in the district. I think if you ask the teachers, generally speaking, K-5 and those that have met with those outside consultants at 612, they are having great experience from those opportunities. And certainly at the literacy nights that we've had in the past couple of weeks at the 3 different schools, you saw the fruits of that labor in some of those presentations, which were fabulous. Title III is dedicated to our English as second language learners. And again, funds our after-school programs and our summer programs, again at all 5 schools. A huge thank you here to the Hendrick Hudson Free Library that does after-school support for our K-5 students during the school year for free. It supports our ENL teacher professional development, professional materials for those teachers, and any and all materials that we purchase to enhance the learning experiences of our second language learners. The CRC Summer Curriculum Fund that you saw on the previous page also supports in-service for teachers, extended school year curriculum projects, and summer teacher workshops and institutes that we send folks to. The BOCES PD, again, K-5 Science 21 program comes through that. Our PNW Social Studies ELA database, which is a K-8 program, comes through that. Our instructional leaders at 612 attend their regional collegial seminars at BOCES where they meet with their colleagues in the region who teach the similar content area and manage their similar departments. We go to many, many, many content area workshops all through K-12 and including special services. It's not just classroom teachers that attend, it's our PPS department. We bring some people in on site to do some work with our teachers, of course, and then the leadership teams at each of the buildings does some work with BOCES, especially over the summer for strategic planning. So we do, we have a wide variety of opportunities, all of which are well used, and I think if you were to visit the buildings and talk to our staff, well evidenced in the work that they're doing.
So now let's talk about our attendance, where our kids are by grade level, by school, and you'll see a trend here. It's no secret that, like many school districts in Westchester County, we have declining enrollment. These data are calculated on BEDS Day, and BEDS Day is Basic Educational Data Day. It's when the state says we'd like a snapshot of all of your kids and all of your staff and average daily attendance, and it's usually in early October, but what we did is we pulled our average student attendance on October 1st, and it fluctuates. Sometimes it fluctuates by hundreds of kids who move in, kids who move out, families who come back from private schools, a lot of reasons why kids are coming and going, but our attendance as of October 1st, 2017 was 2483. So a big gap or a big decline going back to 2010, but as I'll show you shortly, we have reasons to be optimistic in terms of potential increase in enrollment. So these are our 3 elementary schools, And what I'm highlighting at the bottom is the current number of teachers and students. And you see in the second column, or I guess the first one under BB, is what the current enrollment looks like, and this goes back to around March 1st. The second column, so in this case the 18 and 435, is what we're projecting for next year. Now, the projections are based on two criteria. One, the number of kids that we have rolling over to the following grade level, but also number of students who have enrolled and registered for kindergarten, which is why we start kindergarten registration very early. That number will change. In fact, that number for kindergarten registration will change all the way across the board. Just look at Frank G, for example. Currently, they have 81 students in kindergarten. As of March 1st, they only had 55 enrolled. We're pretty confident we're going to get some more kindergartners. But as you look at the themes across the three elementary schools, and based on our class size policies and projections, BV will increase one section, Frank G will stay the same, and according to our projections, Furnace Woods will decrease by one section. Now, as the board knows, and perhaps some of the families whose kids have been affected in the past, this changes. This changes based on the number of kids that leave or enter the school in the spring, over the summer, sometimes even into the fall. We had a number of students move into one particular elementary school in one particular grade level between September 1st and October 15th, who actually hired an additional teacher because of the class size. So this is our projection, but again, it's based on families that are coming and going, and it's very fluid and always has been very fluid. So the elementary staffing, to match the number of students, we have it by K-5 at the top, going left to right, and by the three schools. And at the very, very top column, we have it broken down by who does what. So you'll see teachers who are split 0.6 or 0.8 or 0.2. That's based on their current assignment. Now, their current assignments are based on one of two things: either IEP demands, because some students' IEPs demand certain services and a certain frequency, or those staff members that are split are based on a number of classroom sections. We talked earlier about Mary Landry, who just presented. She's split between both schools because of the demand of elementary music and elementary string instruction. At our middle school, you'll see current enrollment. We go all the way back to 2016-17 because we can support a projection going out to 2020 and 2021. So this is what we're expecting in terms of enrollment at the middle school. 561 currently, it dips down to 516, which means we're graduating a lot of 8th graders and receiving much fewer 6th graders. It sneaks up a little, but then another drop off in 2020, 2021. Again, these are numbers as of March 1st, projected out a number of years, and they change, but to give you an idea of where we currently sit, where we're projected to sit, this, again, is a projection. Based on current enrollment, here's the staff breakdown of classroom teachers and itinerant teachers at the middle school. We categorize related service teachers. You see that at the bottom. Those include those folks. They provide very important resources to the school and to the children. Most of those are based on IEP demands, so again, they change. Currently, right now, our PPS department are going through annual reviews, and sometimes student supports increase or decrease. So based on those IEPs, our team gets together over the summer and determines where the resources need to go based on the IEPs. And those staffing decisions and staffing allocations are based entirely on student need, not based on class size or enrollment or any other data. And at the high school, you'll see we currently sit, or did sit, at 784. We're expecting a few more kids as we open up school next September. And then you see the projections going into 2021. And again, that's based on who we know is currently in our middle schools. So as we switch the slide and go to the high school staffing, you'll see where the allocations are. Again, the related service folks spread out among the high school, working with the high school kids and high school programs. We've had a number of retirements 8 retirements in total. You'll see not who they are, but what they were doing for us. And the question we always ask ourselves are, do we have an opportunity to perhaps save a few dollars in our budget by not replacing everyone that retires without reducing program? And our analysis this year says, well, based on these positions and based on the programs that they provide, especially art and music, those positions need to be replaced in order to keep our programs where they are. So these 8 folks who are retiring, some of us are jealous and we wish them luck, but we've begun the process of refilling their vacancies, and we have committees of folks who will meet. For the music teachers, they'll do a little performance. For the art teachers, they'll bring in some of their artwork, and for the classroom teachers, they'll do a lesson demonstration.
So proposals for next year, K-8 AIS Math, and all of these are, as you see at the bottom, programs that are cost neutral, so we are utilizing existing staff and our funding to create the opportunity. So we are very excited that we will next year have an opportunity to offer AIS Math in the elementaries and in the middle school. We piloted it a little bit this year, had great success with it, have the people who are interested in taking that over, and we'll get some training over the summer, and we'll put that out there to everybody in the fall. K-5, social and emotional learning, we started really coming off of the summer work, looking at a program, for lack of a better word, that we could use across the board in elementary. Up until this time, most of that work has been focused on the 6-12 level, but it is time to bring it to our little guys, and our teachers are anxious to bring them some supports. So we're still looking through Lisa Schuckman's assistance, and she's not with us this evening, but we have been working as a team to figure out what the best approach would be. Hoping to expand PLTW, so we have Gateway to Technology at the middle school, and of course a very robust program at the high school. I met with John Owens and discussed opportunities for a few more strands at the middle school right now that are not being taught by Rob Mofetta, so we're looking at where other classes might be able to pick up another strand of PLTW. They also have a new K-5 program called Launch, so I will be looking at that with Joe and a couple of teachers to see what that looks like down the road. We talked earlier at another presentation about the digital arts pathway at 612. We have fabulous art teachers in this district, and the 612 folks have worked hard to put together a scope and sequence that will really fill that gap for us. We were a little bit lacking in the digital arts, but we have, and thanks to Jim Mathen's support, we believe we'll have a good program in place at the high school next year. And then building an internal AT. We love initials in education. The initials are for Assistive Technology Team, and that is run through Jean Gizmervik and Matthew, looking at special education needs and how technology can support those needs for our kids. So that's a separate committee. Yes, ma'am.
Could you just explain to the audience what PLTW is?
I'm sorry, we love initials. Project Lead the Way is a huge engineering program. It is a very prestigious opportunity. They've been around forever and have a big presence in this region. So in our high school, we run the biomed program, the science and engineering. Do we do computer science? Computer science. So there are many different pathways, some that they offer that we don't teach here. They offer an architectural piece that I don't know if we participate in completely. So the opportunity to expand on that program because of its engineering focus is very exciting and enticing, and actually fits beautifully with the revamp to the new science standards. So it offers us perhaps a unique opportunity at K-5, and that's what we're going to begin to explore. How does it fit and sit beside what the next gen science standards are, and is it worth our while to begin to look at that opportunity as opposed to the science program that we're currently teaching? So the summary is, Joe, I'll give it back to you.
So to finish where we began, we're going to replace all of the folks who are retiring. Our objective at the beginning was to make sure that our programs remain intact and that they don't leave when people leave or retire. So every program and opportunity we have for kids today, we're going to have next year, in addition to some of the enhancements and program opportunities we're going to build next year that Margaret just mentioned. We will incur some savings with retirements. That's very simple math, that most of our retirees who are leaving are much cheaper to replace, sometimes, but not always. We certainly don't take that into account when we interview folks, but it's just a matter of folks with a number of years of service and have done great things in their district and their kids. They are leaving at a higher salary than most of the folks we bring in. Our K-5 section movement is neutral. We talked about that it's neutral right now if all of the kids we have today show up tomorrow as though that was the first day of school, but we know that there's always fluctuation. We have to be prepared for that. Kindergarten registration is ongoing, and even after kindergarten registration ends, it sort of continues. Even after kindergarten starts, that families walk into the district office or elementary schools and say, wait a minute, we saw the bus. Oh my goodness, we moved here from whatever town or community, or we forgot, or we were on vacation. So those kindergarten teachers that we have throughout the district, we give them a lot of support and thanks, because their class roster is never really set when we think it is. It's very fluid and fluctuates. And lastly, the impact of scheduling. We try to achieve the greatest bang for our buck by scheduling our staff that travel in an efficient manner, and what that does is allows us to provide additional opportunities for them to work with kids. So we'll continue to utilize and look at the schedule of traveling teachers, but the idea is that we're going to continue to build on the programs we have and give even more opportunities to our kids. So that's what to expect.
Thank you.
Offhand, do you know the number of students?
Whoa. No, first we have to wait. I'm so sorry.
But it's about the presentation.
I know, but you have to wait. I'm sorry, Stephanie, I really am. But we have to get through all of this first.
Any questions from you?
Any questions from the board?
What are the new science standards that are?
So they were just approved last year. And no, they haven't rolled out.
No, you know what?
They were approved last year, and I think New York State, to their great credit, learned something by their oops with ELA and math, so it is a slow roll. The new standards are in play right now in our kindergarten and first grade classrooms. Second grade will come on board in September, and it will continue to incrementally roll forward like that.
More questions? I know we have the first two strands of the project Lead the Way computer classes. Is there any, I don't even know if there are any additional, or if there's opportunity.
Yeah, computer science, we're in an interesting conundrum because we partner with Project Lead the Way, which if students achieve to a certain level, they're eligible for credit through Rochester Institute of Technology, a premier engineering school. We also have provided computer science through advanced placement. And I think the issue that we're going to face going forward, not just with computer science, but with other programs that use biomed, for example, where students may choose a pathway in biomed and not have enough room in their schedule for the AP strand. That's a conversation that Jim's having with the counselors and looking at schedules. So it's usually a matter of how many kids register and to make sure that we don't have two competing programs. We're certified and blessed by Project Lead the Way to have that pathway in terms of those two courses, and we have the staff who are blessed by advanced placement. So it usually comes down to we offer the course based on where the interest is.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have our budget presentation on technology.
Okay, I'm going to continue pinch hitting for Matthew, and we were creative to say this presentation was going to take place on March 21st, but we're about 3 weeks later. So our budget goals that have been consistent with our instructional technology, hardware, software plan has been to minimize budget growth, make sure that we keep any expense increases within the property tax cap, and we'll get to that in a minute. We've implemented the strategic instructional technology plan, and separately, later in the spring, we'll get an update on that, as well as the instructional technology coaches. In the elementary schools, we've piloted in 2016 and 17 a one-to-one mobile learning initiative. We've expanded our use of Chrome cards and Chromebooks, and we're looking at the next iteration of what those may be. So Matthew and his team are looking at what the next gen technology will be in terms of classroom instruction and effectiveness. Also reduce costs wherever possible, we'll get into that a little bit, and to make sure that we can support our systems within ourselves and not always rely on outside resources and contractors to help us fix things when they're broken. So the budget process here is we meet with our team to ask what their interests are, which direction they want to go, new technology, test it out. That's why you see the word pilot used. We run it up the flagpole. We discuss the overall budget with Enrique to make sure it fits within the guidelines. We go through a revision process. The Finance Committee met a little bit before this date in March. I think March 19th they met. We make revisions, and then we arrive to where we are tonight. So the 5-year plan update, and this is no different than a 10-year transportation plan update when we recycle our buses and our vans and our equipment. You'll see what happened where and on what date. So as we move into the summer of 19, 20, and 21, the reason we have to be determined is to see any changes in technology, any opportunities that are afforded to us. We know that we have, I'll use an example, our smart boards, whiteboards are getting older, and there's new advanced technologies around that. So we don't want to commit, that's just one example, we don't want to make a commitment today of where we plan on spending our money 3 years down the road. We want to be as loose and adaptable as possible. Another example is a team from the high school spent some time at the Southern Westchester BOCES Regional Information Center. They have a model technology classroom with touch boards, with curriculum downloaded on iPads or touch screens, tables that become computer screens that you can manipulate and work in groups. So technology is moving very, very quickly, and we want to make sure that we don't overcommit too early. But you will see in the last couple of years the hardware upgrades, especially right there at Furnace Woods and BV. In terms of the budget overview, it's a 9.17% increase, and that is wholly because of our lease increase. A number of years ago, our technology lease was much bigger than in years past, and you'll see the lease payment coming up in the next slide, because we did a district-wide software upgrade. So we took all of our units and we upgraded all of the software. Some that's mandated by the state. We have student information software, we have security software, we have a lot of finance software, we have finance and HR software. So the big payment coming in that is budgeted for the 2018-19 school year is to offset that increase when we did a district-wide software upgrade. We expect after 2018-19 that it would go back down because we'd be focused on hardware issues at each school. Of course, when you get to hardware issues at the bigger schools, the middle school and the high school, that will escalate, but this lease payment is something we've committed to from decisions we made in years past. So here's where here are the items that the lease pays for. So we have Chromebooks, we have laptops, we have tabletop computers. We have far fewer of them, but we do have them in many of our classrooms. In fact, that's what operates a lot of the whiteboards. So teachers and kids can use those for instructional purposes. We have piloted tablets, and in fact, many of our special education students have tablets, not just part of their IEP, but we're also learning through a lot of really good research that they work for everybody. Depending on your textbook companies you work with, you can buy tablets with textbooks pre-downloaded. So if you see kids coming home with their backpack not weighing 100 pounds, but they have everything digitally or they have a secure password, they can access their textbook, that's a really good thing. And in fact, it wasn't until a number of years ago that we petitioned the state education department to allow tablets that have textbooks electronically loaded on them to count toward our textbook allocation. As Enrique presented in previous budget deliberations, we received a per pupil expense for textbooks, and that's to actually buy hardcover, old school textbooks. The state has finally recognized the ability to buy a textbook subscription or series or license and use that money for that purchase as opposed to paying it out of pocket. So we're certainly growing our use of instructional technology. In terms of hardware, as we showed you before, there's no increase. We're going to do our replacements through our lease process. We have a 5-year plan, and certainly include some reserves for expenditures after the funds are exhausted. The good thing about technology, and we have a resident technologist on our board, is technology is becoming more sophisticated and quicker and cheaper. So typically when you budget for technology, by the time you run around and pay for it, you experience some savings. So that's a good thing, and we try to make sure that we have a positive balance in our technology vault. The contractual details, this really is for vendors and support. These are the people who provide us either staff development or technical support on the back end. These are the folks that make sure the trains run on time and make sure that no one's hacking into our system, and that all of our systems are working and they're secured, and that we have that we feel good about the information that we have on kids, or particularly our district's finances. The software details again, I'll just go to the bottom. These are really the big software items. Our library databases, instructional applications, it's the websites and different software we purchase to support our curriculum, assessment software when we give students math or reading diagnostics. Those are trying to use technology in order to tabulate those, and certainly at the end our website software. In terms of supplies, the last prong of our technology budget, we have no increase, but the typical expenditures are right there. We make sure that when things break down, we can fix them quickly. And it's been a long time since we've had any significant supply issue. We partner with Edutech. Edutech is our team that does all of our IT support. They work with a lot of districts, but they're the ones who are helping us log in when we can't, or trying to figure out why things don't print when they should. And they're resourceful. They're assigned to each building, and they help out in many, many ways to make sure that as we rely on technology, the technology works. And that's that. Any questions?
Is there any plan to increase the number of Chromebooks that we're currently using within the schools?
Yes.
So that more children have accessibility to
Yep.
the Chromebooks?
Yep. Yeah, they started with a pilot in 2016 or 17, and we, to be honest, can't get enough of them. We had them housed in libraries at some point, in classrooms at others. The instructional technology coaches, when we began that program in 2014, part of their, one of their perks or benefits for stepping up was that they would have access to model the use of technology, and similar to what Margaret and some of the new teachers said, that the skillful teacher training has now created a cult mentality for tenured veteran teachers to want to go and learn about this, similar with Chromebooks.
No, because every time I've been in the schools and I've observed children working on math lessons or reading lessons, I just see the enthusiasm that the kids have, for using these. And, given today's society, I mean, almost every child has some sort of technology at home. And I just think it would probably be very beneficial for
Yeah,
kids
well, and the
to
benefit
use
is they're cheaper. And I remember it was around 2013 or 14, we started pushing our resources toward laptops at that time. We weren't fully committed to Chromebooks, but toward laptops because they were mobile, you could share them. And they weren't the fixed asset taking up instructional space in the classroom. Now, there's still a need for desktops, and we have a computer lab here that kids use. They can sign in, sign out. Teachers can sign in, sign out. We use a lot of desktop applications in our technology classes and in our digital arts classes, but Chromebooks, touch tablets, that's where we're going.
Okay, thank you.
This is off topic a little bit, but with this, in our computer sequence, do we offer classes where when something goes wrong, we call our tech person? Do we offer a class to teach children how to do that?
I don't know I don't know if we have to teach them to do it. I think they know how to fix it.
They're probably better at it than we are.
Taking apart
Yeah.
a computer, putting it back together. I don't mean, how do you copy paste? I'm not talking like that. I'm talking real stuff.
Yeah, I'll look into that. Almost,
instead of like learning how to
a
do.
fix-it team, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good.
I know they do, but that would be kind of cool, like, for kids to learn it. I know some of them are so interested in it, they take apart computers and put them back together on their own. But let's face it, that's a huge job, right? That's a big employment kind of thing, is IT. And problem solving and
I don't remember seeing that.
not just learning Excel, not just learning all this kind of, fancy stuff to communicate, but to actually fix the computer.
Right, I don't remember seeing that on these programs.
I don't know if our computer program, I don't know if
tech
we
program.
have any.
Not in terms of a course of study. We don't offer courses around that, but we can certainly require.
Anybody else?
I'm going to turn it over to Enrique to walk us through our final budget analysis.
Good evening, everyone. Today is the last budget presentation, and the board will have to vote for the proposed budget, so I'll quickly go through it. When we started the budget season, we thought that the budget was going to be between $78.9 and $80 million. We're proposing now a $79.5 million budget compared to $79.6 million budget last year. That's a reduction of $99.5 thousand or 0.1%. Our preliminary tax levy back in January was $42.6 million. We're asking for $40.4 thousand more compared to $41.7 million last year, and that's an increase of 2.1%. We're using a fund balance of $2 million, plus we're using a fund balance restricted from debt service. That means in a past capital project, we don't use all the money, so we're returning it to the community as fund balance, and that's going to be $256,000. For cap information, the New York State cap is 2%. The New York State cap is the lower of 2%, or whatever the inflation rate is in the country. In this case, the inflation rate was 2.1%, therefore the cap was 2%. Our cap, because we have some exclusion and inclusions, is going to be 2.1%, and I said it's going to be $42.6 million compared to $41.7 million last year. The increase from last year is $866,000 or 2.1%. Here you can see the budget, tax levy, and tax cap over the last 6 years. And as you can see, we've always been under the New York State cap until this year. Also, you can see the budget and the tax levy, and as you can see, the change in them this year is negative, and our tax levy is positive 2.1%. This is our preliminary budget compared to last year. As you can see, our non-property tax revenue that includes state aid, BOCES aid, other income, sales tax, transfers, and fund balance is 2.5% lower than last year. Our proposed budget, like I said, is 0.1% lower than last year, and our tax levy is 2.1% higher than last year. This is how the tax levy is paid by the two portions of our district. Our district is divided in two portions. The town of Portland that represents 93% of the payments of our tax levy, and the city of Peekskill that represents the balance. In the case of the town of Portland, there's going to be a 0.02% decrease in the tax rate, and in the case of the city of Peekskill, an increase of 4.3%. So what does that mean for an average house? An average house in the city of Peekskill with an assessed value of $7,700 of assessed value, they're going to see an increase of around $140 per year in tax, while the town of Portland will see a decrease of about $1. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Enrique. Okay. Now we have a presentation on capital project and.
Barbara, we'll have to agree on this first.
Oh, okay.
So this is any final questions about what
All right.
had this without?
Sorry. Any questions?
Everybody's talking about this before.
I know, we've had this forever. Okay, then can I please have a motion to approve the budget as the proposed budget is presented, and the capital project, or
No,
just
just the
separate?
budget.
Okay, so can I please have a motion to approve the proposed budget? Second, all in favor? You're on.
Thank you.
Thank you for all of your work to the Finance Committee, Carol, and everybody else, and to Enrique. Thank you.
Okay. Over the last number of years, our board and our community have been having conversations around improving our facilities. We did a survey in the fall of 2016. We did a survey in the fall of 2017, inquiring with our community to the extent they would support a capital project to meet some of our needs in terms of our infrastructure, some of our educational programs, and other areas of interest. We have been studying this for the past almost, I'll say, year and a half, almost 18 months, and are now have recommended to the board and now to the community supporting a proposed $18.5 million capital project. So let me walk everyone through this. We've been talking about how we got here and what the priority areas are, and ignore the text in the red. That was something from a working draft. So you see April 9th over there. Obviously today's the 11th. What we did is we created 4 priority areas. We took all of our interests that we had in terms of improving our facilities and created 4 areas: safety and security, how students learn, and infrastructure upgrades. Infrastructure upgrades and community facilities. So let's start with the high school. On this slide, and this will be available online for our community, and you'll be seeing more of this as we go on tour, and we'll talk about that at the end. This little chart on the left that of course you can't read because it's in fine print. There's a whole lot of stuff there. The majority of those items come from our building condition survey. Our building condition survey is a mandated 5-year report that the state education department demands every public school district in New York State prepare. It's done by a third party. It's done by architects and engineers that are certified and approved by New York State, to go and essentially fill out a report looking at all our nooks and crannies to make sure our schools are safe, to make sure that they're inhabitable for students, and to make sure that they're up to code. So there are a lot of things, and I'll just talk about a few highlights that the Building Condition Survey talks about. It talks about paving, ADA compliance, Americans with Disability Act, make sure that there are adequate ramps or elevators or handrails, make sure that locker rooms and restrooms are ADA compliant, HVAC, masonry, lighting, cabling, all sorts of things. Many things that you see with the naked eye in terms of paving and drivewalks and sideways and maybe exterior lighting, and a lot of things you'll never see because they're behind the scenes. So what we have done, and you'll see this theme throughout each of the 5 schools, is we've color-coded based on the focus areas on the bottom with what to expect in each school. What you will see is a proposal to improve some of our science labs and auditoriums, and we'll get to that in a second. So here's a depiction of 2 different science rooms in our high school. And over the last number of years, this community has had conversations about modernizing those science rooms. We've heard today about different science programs and making sure that kids have opportunities to learn in spaces that are not only 21st century ready, but also preparing them for college in the real world. So the improvements to our science labs, science classrooms, which we've surveyed the community twice about improving, would be these 4 areas. Technology, infrastructure, casework, which is a fancy word for fixtures and furniture, as well as lighting. Some architectural renderings of the new space. Again, these are renderings, but show open spaces for flexible seating, more opportunities for lab spaces for the students, just a brighter area, more spacious area for kids to work. You see in the bottom left picture what some of the spaces would look like in terms of breakout sessions, prep rooms for teachers, and where sterile supplies are housed, which is a mandate by the state education department. The high school auditorium is another major area that we're looking to improve, and again, we've asked our community each of the last 2 years in a survey about their thoughts and wishes around improving the auditorium. The auditorium is part of the original building, built in 1926. The most recent upgrades to the auditorium, most recent significant upgrades happened in the 1960s. So we're looking to achieve these 7 things: improve the acoustics, refurbish the seating, refurnish the 1960s finishes, a new floor, ceiling upgrades, house lights, and other miscellaneous improvements in terms of upgrading our auditorium. And this is another view looking out at the stage and the pit. And this is one picture of what the auditorium could look like. Again, a rendering from our architects. So you see the current view in the bottom, and then you see the proposed, lighter, brighter, more airy for our students. Another picture here is looking out from the stage into the seating area and up to the balcony. Now, we consider these spaces for community use. We have a number of community groups that use our auditoriums and major classroom spaces, including our library, our cafeteria, and also our fields. I'll talk about our fields next. Aerial picture of our field. This is our main high school field, track and field, where we play many sports, and you can see it's worn out from this picture. That's pretty standard because it gets a lot of play. What we're looking to do is replace the track. The track is over 30 years old. It has dips. It has worn. There are foundation issues with our track, and if any of your kids participate on our track team, you'll know that we don't host many home events because of the conditions of that facility. We're looking to upgrade it. This is a real basic rendering because there's really not much to do. But we're upgrading it with a new track, and what we know is that in order to go in and dig up a track, you're going to mess up your field. It's right now a sod field. We're talking bulldozers, we're talking backhoes, we're talking big dumpster trucks. So in order to get to the entire perimeter of the field, we're going to step on our field, our sod field. We are recommending that we replace it with a turf field. We shared with the board and the community a couple weeks ago, and we'll continue to share this analysis, that over a 26-year period, comparing the life and the cost of an artificial turf field versus the cost of maintaining a sod field, that over the course of 25 years we'd save around just south of $250,000. It's almost every day in the fall, well, every day in the summer, fall, and spring, you'll see a team of our outdoor maintenance crew working on the field. When they're out working on the field, they're not working in other areas or working in their schools or driving our buses. And what we do know about turf field is that it's essentially maintenance-free. Now, over the last number of years, there have been some concerns around safety and health issues regarding fields. And a lot of the research, what the research comes down to, is that the issues are based on the fill in the turf, not necessarily the actual turf, but the fill. And when turf fields came into existence in the 70s, I'll use the example of the old Houston Astrodome. It essentially was a concrete floor with green carpet. And everyone had hip problems, knee problems, concussion problems. It really was just indoor carpet. As turf fields and the research around them developed, they became more grass-like. But they had to fill the inside of, between the blades of grass with something, and they used to use crumb rubber. Essentially was chopped up tires. And what we know about rubber and all of the different chemicals and things that go in the rubber, a lot of kids and a lot of adults have responded poorly to that. There's a lot of research around different sort of fill, either using cork or using coconut. And it was in November of 2016 that Anthony Maloney and Enrique and myself visited our friends in Pleasantville, who recently replaced their turf field. And their big issue wasn't about the turf field, it was about what do we fill it with. And they identified and provided us with a company that uses hypoallergenic fill. It's a mix of cork and coconut. And it actually is, it actually has become a very big business now in the turf field industry, because you see them more not only in public schools, but certainly colleges and in a lot of the pros. So we're recommending that while we have to replace the field with something, we're recommending turf because it's more durable, and over the long term, it is cheaper. In our middle school, again, similar to the high school, you see a long laundry list of upgrades going down the left-hand column. Not too dissimilar from the high school. A lot of these upgrades are around windows and doors, HVAC, masonry, so on and so forth. Some major improvements that we're recommending to the middle school are in classroom spaces that you see here, and modernizing the auditorium for our student performers. So currently, this is a snapshot of a couple of our classrooms. They're very, very busy. They're very, very full. Not a whole lot of storage space, and not really a whole lot of space for kids to work in small groups and really have a 21st century lab-like experience. A couple of the renderings, similar to the high school, open spaces, more opportunities for kids to work in small groups, flexible furniture. What you see there, that aqua blue table is a touch tank. Those have become a very big, and again, just sort of this filler there, a very big instructional tool in the life sciences. And also an architectural rendering of the middle school auditorium. You'll see two existing pictures at the bottom and what a rendering would look like. One of the funny things about the middle school auditorium is while it's a full service auditorium, if you've ever been in it, there is evidence that the room used to have the ability to be divided into thirds. It was essentially a large group instruction space. And if you look at the bottom picture on your left of the existing auditorium, you see that purple stripe going from bottom right to the middle. In that big box, and you, if you've been to an event, you've seen kids sitting on it and disrupting your view and getting in the way, is what we believe to be the motor that used to drive the partitions that would divide up the auditorium into 3 separate spaces. And if you've ever sat in the auditorium on the left or the right-hand side, and you were sitting completely square in your seat, you would know that that seat is not directing you toward the middle of the stage, it's directing you off-center, because the auditorium was built for 3 separate large group construction spaces, not for one performing arts auditorium. So a lot of the upgrades, not only in terms of facelift and acoustics and overall feel of the space, we're going to move the seats around, we're going to pull up the flooring and install new flooring, make sure that that facility is acoustically sound, to make sure that the kids who use that space, not only for music performances, but also we now have a full service drama program at the middle school to make sure that people are comfortable there and that kids are having an experience that they deserve in the space that they deserve. And then we'll go through the 3 elementary schools, and we're able to blow this up a little bit so you can see where the priority focus areas are. Frank G. Lindsay, again, we're replacing water fountains, handrails, structural issues in terms of concrete repairs. A lot of these things don't look all that fun and exciting, but a lot of the major upgrades to our elementary schools, and we'll start with Frank G. Lindsay, is to improve entry security. What we have realized through both our architects, but also through our safety consultant, is that those 3 elementary schools, and we'll even throw in the middle school, were not built, their entryways, their front doors, were not built with safety in mind. They were built with community in mind, because when you walk into any 4 of those schools, you're in the schools. You're not in a main office. You're not in a place where you can sort of be quarantined or held or like a waiting room. And so the recommendations, both from our safety consultants and our architects, are to redesign the main foyer at all 3 elementary schools with safety in mind, that either create a safe waiting room scenario, or that as you enter those buildings, that they actually enter you into the main office where you can sign in, background check, what have you, depending on some of our upgrades. Moving on to Furnace Woods, a lot of similar issues. Again, this is a older building, around the same date as the 2 other elementary schools. Again, third one down, improve entry security. When you walk into Furnace Woods Elementary School, you go into the second set of doors, you go up a couple steps, and you have access to the building, and the main office is on your right. The recommendation there again is to make the entryway a little more safe and secure, and to redesign actually the entire main office, because some of the issues, we're finding some ADA issues with the main office at Furnace Woods. And Buchanan Verplank, again, not to sound like a broken record, but a lot of the same things. I'll start at the bottom. Plumbing, ventilators, equipment in the kitchen that need to be replaced, the gym door partition. But again, second one, replace entry doors to meet code, and we want to make sure that windows and doors are up to snuff, and that the entryway at BV has some design around it with a little more safety consciousness. So we've been talking about this plan, $18.5 million. To some sounds like a lot of money, to other districts sounds like nothing. Our friends in Croton about 1.5 years ago passed around a $20 million project, and there's a lot of conversation about how does this not increase the tax levy. So this proposal of $18.5 million is paid for out of retiring debt. When school districts want to improve their facilities, they go out and they bond for that experience, they bond for that payment. It's essentially a loan. What happens are the payments on those loans become part of our budget, and they become part of our tax structure. So the school taxes we pay for a lot of things. They pay for salaries, they pay the bills, they pay for buses, and they also pay for loans on improvements that we want to make to our schools. What we know is that over the next 10 years, we're retiring in this district north of $50 million of debt. So we have an opportunity to reissue some of that debt, what we're recommending is $18.5 million, is that comes off the rolls, reissuing it to achieve many of the things we just talked about. So interest rates are low and building aid is expected to rise. We're expecting to receive around 31% state aid from the education department. So what that looks like is while the project is estimated not to exceed $18.5 million, we're only going to need out of our local pocket 12.7 million, and the state will reimburse us the balance of that. Now the issue is we have to go out and borrow 18.5 million. We hire contractors, we approve the scope and sequence, the board approves what the images will look like, what the redesign will look like, and then at the end of the project, we fill out paperwork, we send it to Albany, and they say, okay, substantial completion, they give us the green light, and then we submit for reimbursement to the state. All right, so what will be on the ballot when we get to May 15th is, will you support borrowing $18.5 million when our local share is going to be 12.7, when it's all done and paid for, and we receive our refund from the state. So a lot of numbers, a lot of math have been thrown at you. I'm going to bring Enrique up to talk some of the specifics about the bond maturities and how much is coming off the plate that makes this $18.5 million project no increase to the tax levy.
Thank you. These are a lot of numbers, but basically what you can see is all the different bonds that we have based on the date that the bonds are maturing. So for example, the first bond that was the original 2001 capital project will mature this year. For this year, we're paying $714,000. So starting the following year, our debt maturity will be lower by $714,000. Then if you can look at between the 2021 to 2023 years, you can see close to $3 million of maturities. That means that this year, for example, we're paying $1.2 million for the 0203 capital project. By 2022, 2023, we won't have to pay any. So as you can see, we are having over $58 million bonds or loans that we are going to finish paying between now and 2035, 2036. What does that mean? It means that if we pass the bond, our payments, our increasing the tax levy only for the bond portions, I just want to talk about the bond portions, will decrease given in every single year, given the mature bonds that we're expecting in the next 20 years. So for example, in 1819, we won't need to issue any debt. In 1990 to 1920, we're going to have to issue some debt, but given that a lot more is maturing, our tax levy from bonds is going to decrease by $496,000, and so far and so on every single year. So from the capital bonds, you will not see an increase in your tax levy.
I'll wrap it up to say, what do we do now? Well, so our annual budget vote is May 15th, and our bond vote will be with it. There are a lot of districts that decide to have a capital project vote separate from their budget vote, for a number of reasons. We've decided to do them at the same time, mostly because of cost. We've estimated that any vote that we have that does not coincide with our annual budget vote, which this year will be May 15th. Costs are rounding upwards of $10,000. And that's a cost to the Elections Commission, it's a cost to rent the machines, to hire the staff, so on and so forth. So the reason we picked May 15th is to have this bond right along with the annual budget vote. So we've been scheduling our PTA meetings for the rest of April and into May, and I think I've heard from almost everyone in terms of the date and time. So what we'll do is we'll take the presentation you just saw, break it down in the school, into a school-specific presentation so families at Furnace Woods can understand or have a better idea of what their kids will experience. But also we'll talk about middle school and high school upgrades so that when their kids get to Blue Mountain Middle School or the high school, that they can expect what, or they can see what upgrades to expect for their kids, because these projects take a while. Some things can get done quicker than others. Some we have to go out for a bid, and others we can use state contract. Nothing is really easy when you're working in bureaucracy, but certainly we're going to try to push this completion, the implementation and completion of the project very, very quickly. We have meetings with community organizations. This includes Rotary, the Montrose Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce. As soon as tomorrow, I think 10 o'clock, we're on the road meeting with one of our senior citizen groups to talk about our budget as well as the bond. We're going to schedule community roundtables where we can have more conversations and get in a little more deeper in Q&A sessions regarding the proposed bond throughout the community. Tomorrow we're going to email this information as well as a 4-minute overview video of the bond and its rationale and what's in it and why. So every parent that we have an email address for will receive an email with a link to a 4-minute explainer as to how we got here. That will go out tomorrow. We're populating our website. We have a dedicated spot on our district website for all things capital project. And in our annual budget newsletter, in that mailer, we're going to have information on the capital project as well. And 2 things I handed out to the board, which I'll make available over here on the table for you folks, is a front and back quick explainer over the 4 focus areas of the bond, and a little more detail into these 4 focus areas and why they're important. Talks about the financing of the project and how that works in terms of state aid and retiring debt. And similarly, we have some of the same content in what we call a POM card. All of these will be available in main offices and libraries, and maybe you'll see them in some businesses around town. This document, this front and back, you'll see poster size and presented to PTAs and most likely pass around at PTA meetings. So I will leave these over here. This has been a very daunting task. I know Anthony's over here behind us.
Resting
Resting because he's been beating up the architects and everyone, trying to make sure that we meet everyone's needs. But it's important to underscore that we got here because every 5 years, I'll go back to this building condition survey, we got here because we're required by law to report the status of our facilities to the state. And what the state mandates is that if we go forward with this plan and we have voter approval, we send this plan to the state, and the state has to cross-check this document with the building condition survey from the summer of 2016. We can't just go spend your money frivolously. It has to fit with the objectives that the state has proposed, every single item. Some items the state will say, we're not going to reimburse you for that. Some items the state will say, go back and check your design or so on and so forth. And that's the checks and balances that is make sure that the community knows that it's cyclical, that what our independent architects and engineers found in terms of improvements and what we're asking you to support to improve are consistent. That the report doesn't say one thing, A, B, and C, and in our plan is X, Y, and Z. So there's a level of accountability built into this, and that's a good thing. The other question that I'll put out here is, what does all this mean with regards to Indian Point? What we know is regardless of the future of Indian Point, our district is aging. Our district facilities are aging. And you guys have seen it. And I don't think I have to sell anybody in this community on doors that need replaced, or windows, or potholes, or lighting, or HVAC, horrible timing that we're gonna have hot weather Friday and Saturday, and let's hope the air conditioning works in our auditorium when 700 families are in there. We have to make sure that we protect our assets. By reissuing debt, as Enrique said, this will not create a new tax and it will not change your tax bill. And in fact, if this $18.5 million project is all that we need to do that maybe gets us 5, 7, or 10 years out, the retiring debt from all of the other bond maturities that Enrique talked about will go back to the tax levy, meaning there's a very good potential that taxes could be reduced. So timing is everything, but we know that our facilities are, to some extent, being held up by Band-Aids and tape, but we also have an opportunity to continue to build some exciting programs and opportunities for our kids. So you will see me at any of these events, come to a PTA meeting, come to any of our roundtables. We're going to schedule them both in the morning, midday, and at night to meet the demands on people's schedules. And all of that will be communicated to our public over the next couple days. So I'm going to leave this information over here.
I just have a very quick question. How are you communicating, as this was brought up at one of the PTA meetings, how are you communicating to people in the community when these meetings are going to be? Because people felt it's very important for the information to be,
Yeah, so today I emailed with a number of PTA presidents and co-presidents, essentially saying, put me on your next agenda, and I'm going to come with a presentation, and we'll have a school-specific conversation. So I know we put those meetings on our district calendar, and I know each PTA zips that out to the community at large.
PTA is something with the connected,
Yeah.
because they recognize
Right,
this
but
is
to
something
the-
that you need the input.
But to the people that don't have children in the schools, is there any way that we could get the information out to them?
Yeah, we're going to use social media, we're going to use our website, and we need to use word of mouth in order
Essentially, some of this
to
is gonna be-
educate them.
This is going to be in the libraries and local businesses as
Yeah.
well, so I mean, at least, and there will be conversation, so,
Absolutely.
it will be discussed. I appreciate you doing this, I know it's a long time coming, but there's no such thing as good timing, it's risky, there's never a perfect time, but I think what you're looking at is things that, the timeliness of the safety and security issues, and the fact that, and again, if the best way to hedge against our property values and any potential damage by Indian Point's closure, I think, is to maintain our schools. And as long as our schools are good and they're educating children and putting them and sending them out into the world well prepared, I think our housing values will support. And I think all of this Indian Point will stabilize itself, it'll shuffle out. But,
And we were here a little over a year ago. We were here in December of 16 and January of 17, ready to unveil facilities plan, and then Indian Point announced its closure. And what we decided to do was to shelve the plan until we learn more about the closure, learn more about our bond rating, what the banks are saying, what the financial plan looks like with Indian Point, before we asked our community to support something like this. We've learned a great deal in the last year and a half. We've seen some very tangible results, $34 million allocated to our communities in the last 12 months to combat the Indian Point closure. We know that more money will be on the way. We just need to be patient. But while all of that nonsense happens, and oh, by the way, more ruminating about Indian Point is that maybe a gas-powered plant may take it over. that would certainly help in terms of pilot revenue. But what we absolutely know is that our facilities are aging and our kids still need dynamic instructional spaces so they can compete and do great things in college and life in the real world. And we can't ignore that while Indian Point and the state figures out what our next steps will be. So as Mary Pat said, there is a risk, but doing nothing isn't an option, because when you do nothing in terms of your facilities and you have an emergency, we pay for those emergencies or those improvements out of pocket. One of the benefits to a bond is that you receive state aid, and when the state can pitch in almost a third of the entire cost, that's a benefit that not many other districts have. So the benefit of doing a project and bonding it and borrowing is you can get more bang for your buck. We can get $18.5 million of upgrades for $12.7 million out of our pocket that won't increase the tax
Well,
levy.
it can be a little more proactive in terms of addressing before it becomes a crisis.
And also, there are things that we can't do anything about. We have to fix because it's mandated that we do it. So,
Thank you.
any other questions?
Quick question. When this gets approved, what are we looking at for everything to get done?
So typically, here's how it might work.
No.
This
For years?
This
When's
gets
everything
approved.
done?
This gets approved in the evening of May 15th. Usually, we need the next day to formally approve the budget, and we would approve this on May 16th. And on May 17th, Enrique, myself, and Anthony, or any group of us, would head to Albany with the resolution. With the resolution that the board passes because the community supported this, and start the process at the state to review our plans. That takes about 20 weeks, 20 to 25 weeks.
End date.
End date probably 4 years. End date probably 4 years. With a lot of it starting quicker. Some of these items that we see could be on state contract, which means we don't need to wait for state approval. They're pre-approved. A lot of the technology security upgrades, key card access, doors, windows, depending on the contracts the state have, we can move quicker.
Right.
That should happen as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, next we're up to audience comments. I would please ask that you come up to the podium, give your name, and try and keep your comments to under 3 minutes, which is part of the board protocols. But in the interest of time, so that we're not here the whole rest of the night, we would appreciate that. So that being said,
Hello, Michelle Fazzolino. We have 2 boys in the district. I did send an email earlier with many questions from the entire district that haven't been answered still to me. But that was in an email. I'm going to address something else tonight. I want to start by actually saying, Margaret, that was a wonderful presentation. The mentoring project, it sounds wonderful. My kids have had amazing teachers in all 3 buildings, and there's just so much that they have to offer. So I love the teachers that we have in the 3 buildings that my kids were in. That's great. So
I'll be
thank you.
happy to share that.
Yes. And it was a great presentation from those young teachers. You like to see nice young teachers who are energetic, that want to take on these kids. Unfortunately, got those young teachers, but that's not always the case. And there are some not so great teachers that taint the rest of them. So, I'm not sure if the board is aware of a teacher in Blue Mountain that threw a pen at a student last month. Hit him with it? Anyone? No, of course you're not. Okay, so, the parent of the child filed a complaint with Mr. Owens, who said he did share it with the superintendent. Guess the board's not aware of it, so I guess that it wasn't properly brought up. And this was after we've had these last couple of meetings that We need to escalate this. And again, the victim was punished. The child had to sit for 2 weeks outside the guidance room for 2 different periods because the parents did not want the child with this teacher any longer. So while they were waiting for approval to get the child moved into another classroom, he was punished by sitting. He wasn't getting taught for 2 weeks. He was sitting outside in the hallway for 2 different classrooms, 2 different classes for 2 weeks straight. So he was being punished. And the board is not aware of this. Also in the middle school, numerous complaints from, and I want to say that that teacher is a support teacher. And why she threw the pen is because she was frustrated that the child wasn't grasping the subject that she was supporting the child on. The second support teacher, again, many complaints from many parents, not so kind, mocks the kids in front of their peers, makes fun of them for not knowing the work, makes them feel inadequate. These are children that are in support for a reason. They're already not feeling so great because they need help with these subjects, and this teacher is bullying them. During one of the classes, she actually questioned the child, had some food in his pocket in front of the entire class, asked, "What's wrong with you? Do you have an eating disorder?" And then continued to mock him in front of the entire class. Again, I'm not sure if the board was made aware of this.
And the board should not be aware of
Okay.
any of the instances, Michelle, and I'll tell
Okay.
you why.
Well, when a kid gets hit by a teacher with a pen.
It's 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm giving you to 3 minutes,
Right.
so don't interrupt me so I can. But
No, it
under
is
our
3 minutes,
policy,
Michelle.
we believe that people thrive. This is our policy, our belief statement. We thrive, and those young teachers came up and actually said that. We thrive when they balance mind, body, and human spirit. A nurturing and supportive environment is fundamental to an individual's growth and positive sense of self. In our perimeters, we will always maintain safe, secure learning environments throughout the district. And one of our objectives, all students will be actively engaged as respectful, responsible, contributing citizens. I don't believe those children were treated as contributing, responsible, respectful citizens, getting stuff thrown at them. It is our policy under the Dignity for All Students Act. It is the Education Law, Sections 10-18, 801A, that the Board of Education recognizes and learning environments that are safe and supportive can increase student attendance and improve academic achievement. The student's ability to learn and achieve high academic standards and the school's ability to educate students is compromised by incidents of discrimination, harassment, including, not limited to, bullying, taunted, intimidation. Teacher bullied and taunted and intimidated. There's many of those kids in that class, so I just wanted to bring it to all of your attention. Because parents, you need to look at why they're coming to certain people to read for them. First of all, they're afraid, but they want you to know that this is happening, that they're going to deaf ears. And apparently I'm a voice. So I'm reading this for many parents are coming to me and want you all to know this.
I would just ask a question. Did these parents go to Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Go to Mr. Hochreiter?
Yes.
With
Yes.
their complaints?
Yes.
They followed all the protocols?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Hickey. I'm new to the district. I'm just a little confused here. I came tonight to learn about the budget vote and the bond vote. And I feel like I just sat through a 2.5-hour staring contest to see who could leave first, because we've been sitting here for 2.5 hours. I'm from another district. I've been to many budget presentations. Never have I been at a board meeting where at the end slide where it says questions and discussions, my hand goes up because that's what I'm here for. And I'm told I'm not going to ask a question. Like,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the last thing on the agenda, number 10, audience comments, hearing of the public on agenda items. So that's what we typically save our time. And different.
And I get that, you guys have a material
I
to cover
just want to
tonight.
tell you, Stephanie, I have to keep to the budget because to the budget. I have to keep to the agenda because it already is 9:45 and we're just wrapping up, certain things. So,
I don't even remember what my question was about.
I know, well, that's why usually you would write it down and then present it at this time.
It would be more effective when the presentation, I'm a teacher, there's teachers up there.
I know.
Let's best practices. It would be more effective to go back to the slides and have the information so I can look at it. So I'll give you a more effective. I'm here 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours to learn about the budget. How about giving me the budget, the line items? What's the proposed for last year? What was the expenditures and the difference? Give me the packet and then I'll go through it.
Isn't there a copy?
The big packet, the one from last year. I want your budget from last year, your proposed, the line items and the difference.
So the process is now that the budget's approved by the board, the budget book gets printed and it gets displayed in public spaces. Libraries, district office, elementary.
So I can go to
offices.
the local library.
It will be online.
Okay.
But the process, and I'm not going to say the law is the board has to adopt the budget. The board adopted was essentially the calculation of the last slide, a not to exceed expense number and a property tax cap number. What is in that 79 point whatever $million will be a line item and separated in the budget book. But now that it's approved and that there were no other changes, that book goes to print and it's available for the public.
I want the last year's budget. What the items were, what was actually the expense and the difference between
And I
the
believe
two.
that's online as well, but we can send
Because
you
I
that
can
if
see
you
it
do
on
access.
And I want to hurry up because I feel horrible and I feel like I'm taking everybody's time here.
Take your time.
I'm sorry. I mean, and my son called
Don't be
because,
sorry.
I mean,
In our budget,
So here's my
we
question.
always have last year
Comparison.
actual compared to this year and the percentage change.
okay, so I'm going to breathe here. I'm sorry because it is late.
Calm down. It's okay.
I sat through your PTA presentation, which was very informative, Dr. Hoffreiter. I met with you, you were extremely helpful. So I was a little taken back by tonight. In your presentation, you said that there was a possibility that you could close the school and there would be 2 schools.
I never said that tonight.
No, not tonight. I'm talking at the PTA meeting, and I'm talking about the March 16th article in LOHUD. That it was just a possibility. You didn't say it was going to happen. That there was a possibility we could transition to 2 schools, elementary schools, or we could combine by grade, going away from neighborhood schools and doing the Princeton plan. Which, listen, whatever happens, I'm new here. I love my neighborhood. I live on Cortlandt Street. I love my neighbors. I'm not leaving. But with that said, I'm going to vote for a budget and a bond. Why would I vote for a bond that's going to improve the infrastructure of all these buildings when there could be a small probability that you might close one?
So let me finish what I said, Stephanie, because I've said this at all 3 elementary PTA meetings. And in fact, we said this as a board almost the moment Indian Point announced its closure. Was the community said, what are we going to do? In the absence of information about state funding, in the absence of information about pilot, we said we're going to have to start looking at sacred cows. Sacred cows were programs at the high school. Sacred cows are how the middle school is organized, and I mentioned this at the PTA.
You did.
That there's a middle school way of organizing 6 through 8 and a team approach, which is very student-centered, but there's a cost to it. There's a junior high model, pros and cons. And what I've said about elementary is that we're going to have to commence some studies, 2 studies. The first study was based on current enrollment, based on projections. Could we close an elementary school that would render significant enough savings in the impact, given the impact of Indian Point? I went on to say that's highly unlikely because I went on to say it's highly unlikely because the worst thing that we would want to do is close a school based on current trends when we don't know what the enrollment will be like post Indian Point. What real estate agents and everyone are telling us is, oh my goodness, Hen Hud had been a district that young families who are looking for their first home or looking to move may have never been on their list because of their position around Indian Point nuclear energy. With that off the table, real estate agents are saying it could go many different ways, and based on the current housing market and limited homes for sale, that if people decide to sell because of the Indian Point pilot going away or for whatever personal reasons, we could actually have an influx of kids. And the worst thing we want to do would be to close an elementary school and then say, oh my goodness, we need to reopen it. I went on to say that the reason we have to commence that study, as well as an elementary reorganization study, and I said two things about that. One is shifting boundaries or a Princeton plan, is because the vast majority of our voting public no longer have kids in the district. And what they're asking us to do is to make sure that before their taxes go up one more penny, that we're looking at some of those sacred cows and that we're costing them out to determine if there's bang for the buck. And what I believe I said at Furnace, Frank G, if not there, certainly the other two, was there's a price tag to these programs. And we as a board and the community are going to have to evaluate whether or not having program A at $1 million a year is worth it compared to having program B where you could save $1 million a year. But we will need to have a group of people do that study, and I said, I can't do it, and Mrs. Teresi is here, was here, she can't do it, none of our staff can do it because we're all too close to it and we all have opinions. And that we need objective people to come in who do this for a living and advise our community on what the options are and what the costs or what the savings are, and then as a community we have to determine whether we value that or not. And no decision has been made, no decision will be made. It will be a very public and transparent process, but I said all of these things.
Okay. Speaking of evaluating, who lives in Buchanan? Anyone live in Buchanan? The Village of Buchanan sent out a survey, and it was specific to you. What you're willing to pay more for the services you want to keep, what you're willing to cut. I would just like to see a community survey like you did for the bond.
Something like that would definitely.
That would go out to all of us.
And we will, but we're not there yet because we haven't even formally decided we're going to do the study, let alone received any of the results to evaluate that. And we absolutely will. Once we have the information and say, okay, here's how much our elective programs at the high school cost for courses we offer for less than 12 kids. Do we want to support that? Do we want to support a middle school model or junior high? Do we want to investigate changing either the boundaries of the elementary schools or the Princeton plan, and what's the cost of that? We absolutely will have that conversation, but we are months, if not a year away from that.
Okay. I don't want to take anyone else's more time. I just want to say that there's anxiety brewing in the community, and you have people who are looking at the Copenhagen School District, should they sell? You have people who are looking, should we go to private school? It's not just me. So, in the interest of the anxiety that's brewing, just a suggestion, I really think audience comments, and mine is only going to be 3 minutes here, it's longer.
It's long.
Audience comments should be at the beginning. If not at the beginning, say, hey guys, come back in 2 hours, because we're going to be here for a while.
You're absolutely right, but look at just the time that the presentations took.
And
I'm
overwhelmed.
terrible doing it, but, you know, and I know, and isn't it wonderful you got to see all the presentations, so.
All right, I'm out. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Giovanni. I'm just going to read something out. I'm actually doing a follow-up on some other meetings that you guys have not responded to, or questions, or just follow-ups that the board should give the community some type of feedback or an answer. So are we hiring a SRO? Where are we with that? Where are we?
We are talking about different safety people.
Are we going to have like an estimated time on when those final decisions are going to be made?
The board is working on it. I don't know if we have it.
We're working with both the county police, the state police, and the town of Portland.
The town of Portland. It would depend on, you know, whether we can receive receive outside funding or what type of security person we want.
Okay, thank you.
We also have, because I ask these questions too, G, a lot, even tonight. We also have security guards in our school, and Enrique's going to kind of look at different ways to, we're looking at different scenarios, okay?
So I think the biggest thing for the last 3 meetings that we sit down and you guys do presentations is the follow-up. When is the follow-up? And you guys have a very selective agenda every day, right, that you guys present to us, but there's no follow-up on some of the questions, and that's why the community is waiting for answers.
Some things we can't give you answers to. I'm really sorry, but for instance, some things that involve people or personnel, we can't give answers to.
I understand about giving, names and stuff like that, but the community has to understand procedures. Are there going to be changes or any updates that are going to be coming out? So is it more effective to pay for an insurance to have a retired officer to have the same power as a SRO?
These are things that the board hasn't even begun to discuss.
Okay.
That
Why, though?
We
It's
just,
been weeks.
Michelle, we're just starting to discuss it.
Yeah, that's.
We missed a whole board meeting. It's unfortunate, but we're that far behind where we should have been starting these discussions already. But the total board, this is our meeting, and
I think for the community, I think as a father figure in this community, safety is my main concern. For any of my kids, for any of their friends.
I would definitely agree with you.
We need to start
Safety is
pushing
a
that
huge
timeline a
issue,
little bit
and
faster.
we are. We have been having these discussions. Unfortunately, as I said, because of snow days, everything has been pushed back and back and back, and we're trying the best that we can.
So I just want a little clarity. So you guys mentioned back in the meeting for 2014, February 14th, that Mr. Baker mentioned about the athletic budget and saving $20,000 over the past 2 years by using security staff, basically their budget. Instead of paying chaperones, he mentioned we're flexing the security staff to come in later to stay during the games. At any given time, and there are multiple games within each JV or varsity. So there are less guards watching over our children during the morning school hours. And how are we addressing this to ensure significant guards during both morning time and sports
It's
events?
staggered. That's what
There might be 5 games at the same time. If there are no games, there's no guards in the morning.
Again, I think we need some answers as things transpire. We don't want to be the next school.
We don't want us to be the next.
Well, from
But
my observation,
I believe that the security team is staggered. I'm so tired. I apologize. Is staggered. So you can have one person coming in for a certain number of hours in the morning, and then somebody else can come in the afternoon, and
Throughout the instructional day, there are multiple security guards who are there throughout the instructional day. Some do a shift 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., some do a shift noon to 8, depending on contest games or whatever. While there are kids here, there are multiple guards. Mr. Mackin could probably more directly answer your question in terms of staffing, a basic scenario of what does staffing look like on an evening game, and you could say, look, we got 4 guys here, 3 guys here, 2 there. But I don't have that off the top of my head.
but it is, does everybody on this board understand that that's the hot topic now for
Yes.
this whole country?
yes.
And at the
Of course
same time, you guys are still thinking
No
and
one's giving
running
us
through.
answers.
I'm going to
running through
interject
things.
too. We've talked about this,
Thank
and
you.
it's time we need to do something. We need, is there
Well, we
somebody
know
else at the
that,
front desk?
Lori, but we
I was
haven't
there
met.
tonight, but there was no one there at the PTA meeting the other day. You were there with us. That door was
We had
open.
to
That's changed. I'm sorry,
We-
that
I
is
agree.
definitely.
Because you were at the
changed.
meeting and I came up to you.
No.
No,
Yes,
no.
you did. Yes, you
The
did.
fashion show, nobody was there.
Yes, you
The
did.
PTA meeting, nobody
Yes,
was
you
there.
did.
Tonight, someone is there because you were at the meeting and we all pointed it out to you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No problem. Take your time. I'm enjoying this. Good evening, folks. John Benedictus. Well, it's like, where do you start, okay? even though some of us have been to a lot of these meetings by the state, there's one tomorrow, if anybody's interested, you'll see just how much this district's probably not going to get. I have yet to see anything that says we're going to get a great windfall. I know they set aside some money this last
It's
budget.
in the law, John.
I'm sorry?
It's in the law. The New York State Power Plant Cessation. Fund.
Right,
It's in the law.
right, there's 45 million set aside
No,
for
there's
about
not.
6
There's
municipalities.
69 million. So
We got 24 million or something that was supposedly put in the budget for some remediation for people just recently, okay? A district that's about to lose $30 million, that 24 mil, and a piece of the action at 45, which would be shared by those other municipalities, it covers us from 1 year. What do we do for the rest of them?
It's a one-year allocation.
Right, it's a one-year allocation. Do we expect to get that year after year after year? No, we're done. So when I look at this budget here, it's a budget as usual. I think these people deserve it, I deserve it, to see some real forecasting as to what's going to happen when we start losing this money. And you have no commitments for the money from the state. And I've been to the meetings too, you know I have. I sit back there and I just listen and take notes. So that's number one. Number two, you talk about the Princeton plan.
Nobody's talked about the Princeton plan, John.
You said it was a possibility, did you not?
No, we said that anything is a positive. We are
Okay,
considering
right,
all
but
things.
what I'm,
but it doesn't
okay, let me
mean
finish,
recommend-
please.
No, I'd like to finish.
Let me
You're
finish.
asking- You're suggesting that that's already in process.
No, I didn't say it's already in
We are just
process.
looking at all of our
You're
options.
discussing it.
That's, no,
Mary
exactly.
Pat?
We are, John, we are looking at options, as
Okay.
is our
And
responsibility.
I want to talk about one of those options.
Exactly.
A couple of years ago, when there was a group of people asking whether the Princeton plan could be implemented, we were told it was a non-starter. It wouldn't save any money, and it was not worth doing. The savings were so small that forget about it, okay? So all of a sudden, though, now the Princeton plan is a possibility if it's necessary. So I just want to remember that. Let's see here. Now it's okay. Now, the bond issue. I mean, here we go again. We go through the same bond issues all the time. And nobody says that the schools shouldn't be taken care of. It's just a question of what needs to be taken care of and how much. And I see that our good old friends, KSQ Design, is quote, the independent study. Now KSQ...
That's not true, John.
That's not true.
That's
Who
not
did
true.
the study?
We used a different architectural firm.
Well, how come it says KSQ on
They're the ones who designed this presentation for us. And if the community supports the bond, we will go out to bid for the architects for the project.
Then why is KSQ's logos on all these sheets?
Because they designed the presentation for us.
Right, okay, and KSQ has been, quote, our preferred contractor for years.
What's wrong with that? First of all, what would be wrong with that?
It was our
They
preferred
know us
contractor,
really, really
and it
well.
always has been. How about the last time when you wanted to build the $10.5 million
That was
auditorium?
a long time
And the
ago.
question became, how many bidders are for this job? And we didn't
We
get
didn't
any
even bid on the
response.
job because the bond didn't get approved.
Right, now, you're saying
And
that
KSQ
this...
didn't charge us anything.
You're saying that we should spend $18.5 million, okay, by this KSQ designed this program, this particular presentation.
That they designed.
Who did they hire the people to do the study? How do we know the study, like here? Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I might have your numbers.
From the state,
No, please
John.
listen. It says here, the middle school science rooms, right? Where'd it go?
John.
Middle school.
You know what,
It's
John?
over at 3 minutes.
Reply to my email, and let's
Okay.
have this
It says middle
conversation.
school science rooms, $1,134,540. Now, I think there's 6 or 5 classrooms there, okay? And if you divide that up, that is one sizable piece of money per classroom. What is going in those classrooms? Can anybody say?
John, there is a picture of it, and it's already 5 minutes, so I'm going to have to
Okay.
ask you to please email Mr. Hockhart or myself the rest
He
of the
has
questions.
the same questions I had the last time.
Thank you. Fine.
I always want to know,
Just please
what's going in
email
to a classroom,
John.
one room,
We'll
that
break-
will cost more than
we'll-
$100,000?
We'll break that down for you, because the state has a mandated formula for every dollar we spend, where it goes. Equipment, contract, design, contingency, inflation, I can give you that breakdown for every dollar.
And then the question I always have is,
John,
do
it's
we have to
5
do all of
minutes.
it? What's the tax ramifications to help us out if you don't do all of it, you do half of it? In other words, does it save us 2%? Does it save us the cap? What's it do for us? In other words, we always got to do an $18 million super project. Why don't we take it easy on this one?
We
And
have,
help the
John.
people who
John,
might be
our last
facing.
budget, our last bond was 4.5, and it was for
I'm
things
sorry?
like, our last bond that went for was for $4.5 million. And it was.
septic.
And it was for septic and other things. This isn't this isn't a luxury tax, for heaven's sake. If you look at those things, I don't know what the proportion is, but I believe it's like 85 to 90% is all safety and security. If you look, it's, each one
I've
is
looked at it, Mary
specified.
Pat.
No, but John, each one is specified.
I
and it
have
talks
looked
about
at it,
safety
and I
security.
still want to know
And I
what
know-
you're going to put in one classroom at over $100,000. That's a science.
We
I
can
have to
break-
ask that question.
You know,
We
John,
can
I'm
break
not a
down every
scientist,
dollar.
but
I
I
have another
guarantee you
one.
that there's a reason.
You have $2.1 million for the auditorium.
That's it. Done.
Now, I know my time is up,
Next person,
and I have to
please.
go.
You may come
but
up to speak. John, I
these are
don't want to have
questions
to call
that need to be
security.
answered.
Thank you, John.
Okay, I promised 3 minutes. Darlene Garrett, I had 2 kids that went through the school system and they're young adults now. In relation to the bond, because I certainly learned.
I'm sorry, Darlene.
Garrett. Mr. Hockhart, you said the bond is, we have to apply for $18.5 million loan and then the state would pay us 31% of that back. Is that based upon how we utilize the bond money? So if we were to maybe utilize it on things where the state doesn't feel reimbursement is needed, is that 31% flat? Flat across the board. And who pays the interest? The interest would be on 18 and
At the
5.
same proportion.
So they pay 31% of the interest. And what about the federal income tax that we would
We
have?
don't pay taxes.
Federal tax? I know there's no state tax.
We don't pay taxes.
Okay, so there's no tax on the bond, that's great. In the proposal for the elementary schools, whether we're 2, 3, whatever, I don't really care right now, but we heard that these schools are not up to code. I mean, basic code, and I guess, and again, I'm learning a lot of this process, and I really would like the help of the board to learn it. How do these schools stay open without not being at code? I mean, doesn't the state come in and?
So they're essentially, that's a great question. They're essentially grandfathered in. Schools and municipal buildings are essentially grandfathered in because those agencies or entities that work on essentially the taxpayer dollar cannot be unilaterally enforced or made to come up to code when the way they do it is through taxing. So every time, I'll go back to this building condition survey. The building condition survey is a mandated document by the state. We have to hire an outside group to do it. It's a checks and balance to say, okay, what's the status of your bathrooms? Do you have certain egress size? Are your hallways wide enough based on the number of kids in the building? Sprinklers, just like your house. And what the state says is if you are to do a project, and if we are to reimburse you through state aid, so you do this through a bond and we're to reimburse you, if you touch these areas, you must, we're mandating you to upgrade those areas. So for example, the foyer at Furnace Woods, we want to reconstruct the foyer, main office at Furnace Woods with a little more sense of safety. Well, because we're going to touch or disrupt that part of the school, we now have to bring that entire part of the facility up to code. So we may need to get rid of the stairs and put part of a ramp or a little elevator for those who are in wheelchairs. So that's when those mandates kick in. So if you're going to disrupt or do any work in that facility, the work you do has to meet code.
Right, just like when you're selling your house, you have to write it up
Yeah.
to code that it's not
Yeah.
already, sure,
Yeah.
okay. And then one last question on the bond. What, because it could take 4 years, as you mentioned, to finish the projects that you want to do within the bond. Obviously, cost of construction goes up during that 4-year timeframe. What projections were put into the bond monetarily and what you're asking the public for based upon the projections of increasing of material, labor, and whatever?
So in that $18.5 million are all different mandated cost calculations. You've got materials, you've got labor, you've got the cost of whatever you're building or buying. And then you have escalation costs. You have essentially a state mandated calculation for inflation. You have to reserve the fee to pay your consultants or contractors to design and do the work. You have to have, I believe, a 20% contingency fee in case you rip up the carpet and you find asbestos. You have money, or a tile, you have money budgeted for those what-if scenarios. And oftentimes, if a project goes well and you don't have to use those extra fees or you don't have those escalations, you actually have a balance left over of your project, and then you have a decision to make. You return that to the taxpayer, or you use the
That's
entire
exactly
bond.
what's happening with these.
Is that 256,000 you mentioned? That's where that's.
That is oftentimes how you come under budget, because the state will not let you borrow 18.5 million, but only expense 15 million and think you can pocket the rest.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be less than 3 minutes, I hope. But it's funny, 3 hours ago, I spent an hour writing a whole 2-page thing, and I was told to rip it up, because nobody's going to want to listen to that.
We're listening.
But, I spoke. My name's Christopher Beloff. I am a resident. I have 2 children that are going to be going to school here. I believe in all the things, and I wanted to thank everybody for all the presentations tonight. They're outstanding. I actually felt a bit of pride of still being a part of this district. So, what I spoke about the last time I spoke here, I am passionate about because of those values and the core beliefs that you have here, with integrity, with respect and accountability and all those things. But it was about the double standard. And I'm not going to go in, I know this is public forum, I know you can't respond to all these things, that there of all the privacy and everything that goes with that. And I appreciate it. After speaking the last time that I was here, that Mr. Hochreiter reached out to me and invited me in to speak with him. But I still left with questions. I was led to believe that there were other issues that led to the termination of the employee. And I just wanted to hand these out or whatever. I'm not even going to read this, but this is just for. I don't think it's proper for me to read this here, but just for you to read, because on this piece of paper, I only see one reason of insubordination and one reason related to a text message. And I said this last time. If there's something that you don't feel that's right and you don't say something, I mean, what does it matter? So to me, this doesn't seem right and it doesn't feel right. I have an insubordination charge here and I have a text message that led to a man being fired that was active in this community that I grew up with, that I went to school with, of many other people that I grew up here, 3 generations that have friends, family, neighbors that work in the school district. And I'm happy that they're there, that they're going to be driving my kids. But I just do not understand this, and I'm not going to let go of this. I want an answer. I don't want one tonight, or I know that you can't speak about it, but I ask you, please, just look into it. It's that disturbing to me, and that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Any board members have anything that they would like to say? Given that, can I please have a
I have a
motion?
question. Are we going to do the meet and greets again? We can't hear you.
Are we going to do the meet and greets again?
Well, we didn't
Nobody has ever said that besides you.
We didn't feel, last night I spoke about this at the PTA meetings, and people felt it was very beneficial to have a different type of forum than the meet and greets. So that's what we're looking into. Joe and I spoke about that today at leadership.
Especially around the bound, some of the.
Meeting at night with
roundtables.
people as, well, nobody else has gone to PTA except, I think, you, myself. Did you go to the high school?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we have been out there speaking to people and listening to their concerns. So I think that going forward, we're going to have more evening meetings. And if people feel that there is a need for the meet and greets, we can reinstate them. But, you know, we have sat there for a whole year going to meetings.
I know, but how many times?
And for 2 years, and nobody
There's more
came,
people now.
so- Well, I think there's different forums
I
that
was gonna say, I
people,
think given the detail and the level of detail that, you know, some of this, I think it makes more sense to have it in a different environment than in a Dunkin' Donuts at, you know, 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I think there's a lot to be said for an evening, you know, for something here where you actually have the facility to do a presentation if necessary.
well, I think at the PTA meetings too, people, you know, because there are board members there, people do feel, you know, more inclined to ask their questions. I've been very pleased with the way the last few PTA meetings have gone, because people have really asked very pertinent questions, and they've talked with, you know, board members on a basis that you can actually dialogue and help people to understand some of the things that perhaps they may not be able to understand. So I just think that that's a better forum, but we can certainly discuss it, and if anybody in the community does feel that they would prefer, you know, meet and greets early in the morning, we certainly can make ourselves available. Anybody else? Okay, then can I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second? All in favor? Thank you to the community for coming out. We appreciate it.